You are now experiencing the Digital Life with Kevin Lockett.
Hey everybody, welcome to the second anniversary of the Digital Life podcast. So when I launched the show back in 2013, the goals were simple. Have fun, be informative, and have great guests. Well, that tradition continues with one of my favorite all-time guests, Kelly Amos from Loudspeaker Films. Now, Kelly exhibits three things that I love: media, technology, and telling the truth. Through her Teach documentary series, Kelly has shown how bad policies and a lack of economic prosperity has affected the lives and education of African American youth in urban areas. But like a rose blooming in the concrete, on today's show, Kelly and I talk about her latest Kickstarter-backed documentary, Code Oakland, which tells the story how civic leaders in Oakland are teaching computer coding to African American youth to level the Silicon Valley playing field. I had a great time talking to Kelly, and I hope you're not only inspired by her documentary, but also by the great work by Camilla Pryforce, Black Girls Code, and Yes We Code. So without further ado, here's my conversation with the director of Code Oakland, Kelly Amos.
Okay, we're talking to Kelly Amos, director of Code Oakland. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much.
You know, we're kindred spirits in a lot of ways. I found out that the worst job you ever had was a telemarketer for an insurance agency. And my worst job ever was being a telemarketer for a credit card company. So we're tied and bonded that way.
You know, we're both from the Midwest. I think that's partly why. It's the flat accent of the Midwest and all the telemarketing companies there.
Yeah, it's almost like a rite of passage that you have to get hired and fired or quit from a telemarketing company before you grow up.
Yes, absolutely. At least it paid some bills at the time, but I feel so badly for everyone I called during those summers.
Yeah, me too. I got fired because I just made up people that I sold to because I couldn't meet a quota, so I just made people up.
Oh, yeah. I got sent home all the time because I wasn't mean enough or fierce enough to try and sell people with terrible insurance.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well, you got to do every kind of job to appreciate the good one.
That is true. And you have a fabulous, I don't even call it the job, you have a fabulous career now. When I was looking at your biography, it reminded me like the last 3 seasons of The Wire, because you have been involved with education, politics, and media and journalism.
Yeah, that's a great show. And actually, I have a screenplay I've written, and I kind of think it's a bit like The Wire in some ways, but more Washington, D.C., and the connection of politics and policy, and then real people living there and how that impacts their lives. So that might be something you'll be interested in the future if I ever get it made.
Yeah, you're so busy right now. I'll be glad to take a look at that once that happens. So your career is really interesting because your original goal was that you wanted to be a foreign correspondent, but you ended up going into education. So what was that point where you decided to go from media to becoming a teacher?
I think I was the editor of the Women's Journal at Georgetown in college, and just always thought I would be a photojournalist and probably an international journalist. And then a new program came out the year I was graduating, Teach for America. And at that point, it was just a poster sort of thrown up around campus. No one knew what it was. It definitely, it was brand new, so it wasn't like people knew, oh, this is going to be something great for your resume, or, it's going to become this massive organization that people love or hate and is involved in everything. So I signed up for that, and then ended up teaching in South Central Los Angeles in an elementary school there. First they go in, and basically they gave me 3 days to prepare for the classroom, and they gave me sort of the leftover kids they had in both 4th grade and 5th grade that other teachers didn't want. So I taught 10 4th graders and 22 5th graders as a first-year teacher. And that was just one of the many experiences I had there and things I got to see about how the school was not serving the needs of the children there. That wasn't a good setup for any teacher, but for a first-year teacher. And it turns out I had most of the kids that were considered discipline issues, which to me, that wasn't the case, but I learned that later. So teaching in South Central, what I saw there opened my eyes to this incredible inequity in our public education system and the way it seemed to me that the students and their parents were being treated by our education system was astounding. So that changed my focus. There was no way for me to walk away from that and change now I'm going to go into an international field, although I did some work in international policy. But seeing what happened there is what I've been working to change ever since for over 20 years. And film is just a new way I'm doing that, and a way that for me brings more of my artistic and creative side to the table too.
There was a quote that you said a while ago. You said, I like documenting the change that is going to happen.
I think for the films, there's a lot of work to make sure people are seeing them now and that they have an impact. But for me, it's just as important that we are documenting this truth of this inequality. And it's not just in our education system, as you know. It's in the juvenile justice system. It's in the over-incarceration of citizens of color in America. We need as much proof and documentation of how our own institutions and policies are continuing to maintain these basically two populations, two levels of citizenship in America right now, so that we change it and then don't return to it. Sometimes it feels like we're all on this cycle. History right now, it's like we're back in the 50s, we're back in the 60s, and how is it possible that we haven't changed and evolved farther ahead than where we are today?
Yeah, when you made a Path to Prison, you remarked that, you went back to the school that you taught at and you realized that there hasn't been any changes made. And that's just something that kids that live in urban areas go through all the time. You probably talk to parents who went through the same thing when they felt like, well, yeah, the school might be a little bit nicer, there might be paint on the walls, but as far as education goes, it still hasn't moved any.
I mean, this is 20 years later, and there were still some of the same teachers in the building, which, if they had been excellent, there were some excellent teachers at that school. But there were also a couple of teachers that really should not have been teaching, in my opinion, and I mean, it was pretty clear. And they weren't from the community, they weren't from the area, but it was the only job they could get and keep. And they were still there when I went back. So that's 20 years of kids going through potentially a classroom where very little learning is taking place. It's just amazing. And then to talk to I tracked down a couple former students, and they found other students that either I'd had or just known. And I pulled out a photo album I had of all my kids from the 2 years I was there. And the two boys that I was talking to went through it, and they said, they're pointing to the pictures of the other boys in the class and saying, oh, he's dead, he's in prison, he's dead. I mean, if I'm doing anything in this life, it's to make more people who perhaps look like me or grew up where I grew up see the devastation we are causing and actually understand the severity of it so we can change it.
Yeah, that sounds like what Nas made his documentary Stillmatic, and there was a scene where there was a picture of him when he first started around 18 years old, and it was a bunch of people that he knew sitting on the bench. And he basically said the same thing you did. He said, well, this guy's in jail and this guy's dead. And he started to well up a bit because he realized if it wasn't for hip-hop, he might have gone the same route where he could be in jail or in a dead-end job or dead.
Exactly. I mean, and the boy, today I've been filming a couple of boys, two boys in D.C., they're cousins, and other kids as well over like 5 years. Kids with all the potential in the world, and it seems like the only messages the world is sending them is that you're going to be some kind of criminal. They are harassed routinely on the metro or whatever by by law enforcement, just because of where they live. Or society tells them, oh, you should get involved in music or play a sport because that's how you're going to get out of here. And thank God for Nas and people who, were able to have that talent to break out of cycles like that. But that shouldn't be the only option to get out, is to be an incredibly talented performer or an incredibly talented athlete. Your brain should be the thing that can get you wherever you want to go.
So this brings us to Code Oakland, where it gives kids another opportunity to break out, where you don't have to be a musician, a rapper, or a ball player. Where did the inspiration of Code Oakland come from?
It was so great. Somebody introduced me to Kalima Pryforth, who's the star of the film, for another reason, because I was moving into Oakland and I wanted to volunteer, and I was looking at what people were doing here with technology and with youth, and getting to know the community. And when Kalima told me his background and his story, starting out in a group home in Bedford-Stuy, Brooklyn, and some amazing experiences that he went through and what he's done with his life, I knew that was the film I wanted to make next. I had known for a while I wanted to make a film in Oakland because I think it's going through a really interesting evolution right now, mostly because Silicon Valley is right there, and Silicon Valley is starting to bus employees in so they can live in Oakland, but it's not necessarily hiring people who were already here in Oakland. So that's part of the story. And then Kalima, with his work with youth and teaching kids how to code, and also the way he inspires kids, you have to see him in action to sort of get it, because he is a remarkable person that just glows and has an incredible amount of energy. To me, that film was, okay, this is the story of Oakland. Some people think that Oakland is going to be the new Brooklyn. Some people say it's the new Silicon Valley. And Kalima sort of embodies both the spirits of both those areas, but he's also, this is Oakland. It's not the new anything. This is Oakland. Oakland has its own spirit, and it's a really cool city, and it's gorgeous, and it's time that the rest of the world sort of sees everything about Oakland. And I think this film is sort of trying to do that. It's a short film, and it's pretty specific, but it shows you the beauty of Oakland and the beauty of the people who are really dedicated to this concept of community, that technology, especially now, it doesn't have to just be about making a profit. Who can sell something and become a billionaire? Who can create, as Kalima would say, who can create a new app to give you pizza at 3 a.m. in the morning? But technology can change the world. And when he and others like him, Kimberly Bryan at Black Girls Code, Van Jones, who started Yes We Code, and a lot of local leaders here in Oakland, when they teach kids how to code and give them these skills, what the kids come up with is incredible. They create beautiful apps that will change the world, and those are the kind of apps and programs that we need to support to change the face of technology.
Yeah, that's one thing that's always frustrated me when you see the history of African Americans. There were very creative people. There's a lot of creative people in the history as far as inventing things. Before the Ford family, there was African American family that created cars. I guess I get frustrated because I think there's so many creatives that come from so many different demographics, but it seems like people don't want to see it. It's like, well, technology people only look this certain way, and no, it's not. Like, any idea could come from any place at any time.
It's absolutely true, and there are a lot of actually inventors from the Oakland area, and I'm learning more every day. And I think a lot of people who are white or from a different background, I don't know, maybe most of it, we don't want to be, I'm saying we, but I don't put myself into the category, don't want to really embrace that knowledge of everything that is out there, because then, how have I been living my life? If I can't put people into these neat categories, then I haven't really been, living my life very well, or I've been contributing to inequity in some ways. And it's hard to sort of say, how are the ways in my own life that I might be contributing to inequality, just through stereotypes I'm continuing to hold, and the information I'm just resisting or ignoring. I think it's interesting. It is amazing to me that we're still having these kind of conversations, and I know I'm not the only one who's amazed by that. One reason also behind Code Oakland that I wanted to make it is that people are just now learning what a hackathon is. And with this film, I want it to be ingrained in people's minds after they see the film, that every time they think about coding or a hackathon, they're going to see a student like Isaiah, who's in the film, he's 14 and a genius. That's who they're going to see. And it's going to start to change this sort of unconscious bias. I mean, to the extent I can, that's kind of the goal that I'd like to achieve with it.
Are the tech companies out there in the Silicon Valley, are they receptive? Okay, let me change that around. I'm always frustrated by the 2% when I see there are only 2% of African Americans that's in technology. And one of the lines that you had at the end of Code Oakland, one of the things that was written was, is the Silicon Valley ready to be hacked? And I do ask that question where there's a lot of people around who can actually work for these companies. You know, it's not like you can't find any people, but it doesn't seem like they're fully embracing people of different backgrounds working for their organizations.
I know. I guess it remains to be seen if the actions are going to follow the talk, because there are a lot of Silicon Valley leaders and companies. There seems to be a lot of talk about making the tech workforce more diverse and to have more women as well. But it doesn't seem, it seems so easy to do that because everyone I meet in Oakland is techie. A lot of African-American techies are based right here, 40 miles away from Silicon Valley, but you don't see them in the leadership positions. Or as a couple friends have told me, there's always one of them at a company, and they all kind of get together and laugh that I'm the one black man at this company. It doesn't seem that difficult to change those statistics, so it'll be interesting to see who does.
So let's go to Kickstarter for a second. You used Kickstarter to fund Code Oakland, and it was very successful. What did you do to get people to back your films?
Yeah, I've been building this for 5 years. So the first Kickstarter we did was really early on and with nothing to show yet. I just knew what I wanted to do. I had a vision, but I had to learn how to make the films, how to produce them, and call in a lot of favors and convince a lot of professionals to help for either, nothing or for reduced rates. And I've been very lucky because we've raised enough to get by and to finish the films, although if I could have raised more, they would be even better films, but, it's slowly evolving, I hope, to that direction. But we had a lot of donors, and that is the Kickstarter model, and that also helped us build this foundation, a community around Teach. So the first 3 films came out a few years ago, and those really are very much about education and inequality in the education system and the connection to over-incarceration. And then Code Oakland, by the time I finished this film, now we have, several thousand people on the mailing list. We've had a lot of fans on Facebook and Twitter. Could definitely do more and hope to go to the next level soon. But that's how we were able to raise the money. And that was just Kickstarter. I mean, we raised a lot of money off of Kickstarter as well. The films are actually pretty expensive to make if you're going to use really professional DPs and editors and just the travel to go film and things like that. So I'm very fortunate that I've been able to raise enough money. Independent filmmaking and short films on top of that and documentaries on top of that, not really a lucrative business, especially if you're a new filmmaker.
So what type of equipment do you use? What do you use to film?
We've used actually a lot of Canon and Panasonic cameras. The one thing I don't do, well, actually I do, but I hire DPs wherever I'm filming, and whatever the equipment they have, usually make it work. And we've had some incredible equipment and some not so great equipment to film with. Actually, a lot of the shots in Code Oakland, I used a little Kodak $200 camera and drove around and put it out of the sunroof to take those shots myself. So there's room for growth in the quality of the film. And then we edit on Final Cut Pro 7. I haven't moved to 10 yet, or X. I'm resisting it, but Final Cut Pro 7 is pretty great to edit with.
And even though this is almost like a bootleg situation, you've actually won. You're acknowledged in Canada for a film festival for the works. It would be nice to have all these high-priced cameras, but at the same time, you don't need this if you have a good story and you can cut it together really well.
Exactly. I mean, when I see it, I see all the errors or the fact that this had a great camera and this other shot could be better. But when people are watching, I think, a documentary, there's a lot of they give you a lot of room because they get the story and they get the vision. And then when you have someone like Kalima in it, I mean, you kind of, that's all you need is a great storyteller. So.
Yeah, and you keep the films under 17 minutes. so it could be more interactive with the audience? I mean, was that a decision that you made early on when you started making your films, or was that something that just came along as you were filming it?
It actually came along. At the beginning, I wanted to make a feature-length film that would be called Teached. And as I was starting to film it and actually had an entire rough cut put together, Waiting for Superman came out, and another film called The Lottery. And there was no way with this little startup, basically had no funding at the beginning. And then just with the kind of footage I had, and a great editor, Kate Steiner in San Francisco, was helping me out really early on, and she's very experienced. She said, too, you have a couple of great stories here, and they would make more sense as short films as opposed to like 8 chapters in one long film. And then it just started to make more sense. People have a short attention span, and more things are going online, so it makes sense that things would be shorter. And then this idea that you can have an interactive screening program so that as opposed to an hour-and-a-half film and everybody wants to leave at the end because that's already pretty long, you can show a 20-minute film or you can show 2 of the films, and in between the films have guest speakers and have a lot of audience interaction so people can ask people who are in the film or experts or community leaders questions about the issues. In some of the screening events we've had, people have had breakout sessions after the films and even come up with strategy planning and for their communities. Okay, how are we going to address over-incarceration issue here in Brooklyn, where this one group in particular at Brooklyn Law School, or, we're thinking about having charter schools in Nebraska, my home state. They've shown the charter school film there, 5 or 6 times now, including to state legislators. So there are ways you can use the films. I think it's just a little easier, a little more flexible than a feature-length film.
Speaking of Nebraska, now you're from a small town outside of Omaha, but you're very comfortable in urban settings. So is it a case that as a kid you went to urban areas, or was it just you felt comfortable in urban areas once you started traveling around?
I think it's because I have sort of a weird background that I grew up outside of a small town. It was a town of 1,200 people, and didn't, think that was anything remarkable. When I was 14, my grandfather actually paid for me to go to a prep school in Massachusetts, and I really did not fit in there, and I was really behind academically to go there. And I think that experience I was also someone who was not the mainstream going to school there. And it's, for whatever reason, I think I've also traveled a lot. I just see people on face value, or maybe, I have never been just considered myself sort of mainstream, even if other people might think I look that way. So, yeah, I don't know. I love cities. I loved living in LA. I love Washington, D.C., where I lived for a long time. And now I think Oakland is really great because it's kind of like D.C. in terms of a lot of policy people and a lot of nonprofit types and, great community leaders. But you also have palm trees and sun. So that's I kind of like that too. I can't explain it.
Yeah, I do love the palm trees. I don't get too much of that in Ohio, but I just love hugging them. I can't barely hug a palm tree, but I was like, I love you so much, palm tree. You don't know how much I love the heat.
I have hugged a tree since I've moved to California. I have to admit it. I did try hugging a tree.
Yeah, those things are huge. It's like the first time I saw one, I was like, this thing is gigantic. I didn't, I'm surprised they don't tip over, but I mean, they're so big and rooted. Yeah. Talk about D.C. for a second. You worked for Dianne Feinstein. What's one thing that you picked up from her that you still carry today?
Oh, well, without a doubt, Senator Feinstein would not take no for an answer. Her sort of tag phrase at the time was "just do it," and we even had T-shirts made as a staff that said "just do it." And after Senator Feinstein, I also worked for a great school leader, Iracema Salcido, in D.C., and an education policy brain and writer, Checker Finn, who was sort of on the a totally different person. All 3 of them are people who don't take no for an answer, or if they hear no, they just keep going. And I think with these films, if I hadn't seen that in action from my mentors, I don't know if I would have, it gave me this ability to get a million no's I'm constantly fundraising. I'm constantly getting no's. Or things are hard, and you just say, okay, keep going. Don't let it get you down. Just keep moving and just do it.
Yeah, and there's a kid that I saw that you dedicated a film to, is Malik Smith. He was a cute kid. I mean, what happened to him?
Malik, I became his big sister right after he turned 5, and he had been adopted. His birth mother was HIV positive and abandoned him. So he was born HIV positive. And that's pretty much the only part of that story I'm going to tell. But he was an angel. Everyone who met Malik, I mean, not just cute, like an amazing kid, really smart, really clever, had a very adult sense of humor for such a little kid. And it was, I mean, it was the moment in my life that I know God said, put us together. I was also sick as a kid in a different way, and that I think helped me understand what he was going through, taking medication and getting sick a lot. So eventually his little body did succumb to pneumonia, and he died just before his 9th birthday. The happy part that came out of that, well, a lot of happy things actually, because his whole family and I became pretty close. They're my second family. And his cousin Janae, one of the other kids that I became a big sister to, we're really close now, and she's in college. So I'm really happy that, you know, I know he is looking down and he's proud. But he was just an amazing, adorable kid and changed my life, really, I would say. I had already taught by then and knew, you know, had met so many great kids and their families, but Malik was very, very special in my life.
Yeah, sounds like it. There recently was a hackathon in Oakland, but what have you learned by watching the kids when they're going through these hackathons and they're building these apps, and because they realize they can compete in this world of tech?
Yeah, it was amazing. They just had their second, Kino Labs just had their second hackathon for Black Male Achievement last weekend, just a few days ago. What is incredible is how young some of the kids are that become leaders of these groups. What's awesome about the hackathons is it's the technology part, but it's also that they're teaching the kids that how you work as a team and what the different components of a team would be. So there are developers, there's the artistic creative side, the designer, there's the coder, and there's a leader, a sort of a team leader with the idea that's going to make it happen. And a couple times now I've seen these kids who are 7 or 8 years old who've become sort of leading the team. It's amazing. And yeah, once the kids see, I think it just makes it very easy to envision. I think adults would do well to go through this process too, to understand how the teams work together and the different components of creating apps and websites. But the kids, yeah, it's incredible. And they have to present what they create, and that gives them great experience in public speaking too. So it's pretty awesome. It's a pretty great thing to see, especially when you see what they create out of it. We're doing a premiere of Code Oakland in New York City, and 2 students that are in the film and were filmed are going to present their apps to the crowd just to really show it in action. And one of them is called Recuperate, and it's for providing youth with access to mental health counseling via a phone or online. And the second one is called Stop, and it's to stop child sex trafficking in America. It's like, and they're both, you know, that they will become. It's remarkable what the kids come up with.
It is, because I'm trying to learn codes on different platforms, and it's not difficult. But at the same time, you know, I think once you get the hang of it, it's fine. But yeah, it's a skill that everyone should have or try to get. But yeah, it's fascinating when you see young kids just able to do this stuff on the fly. It's like, wow, okay, I'm really getting old.
Yeah, exactly. They can do everything. And there's an app for that. Anything you can app. There's an app for that. Oh, right, okay. Yeah, I don't myself. I know how to use HTML. That's about it at this point.
Yeah. Well, Kelly Amos, thank you for the conversation. People need to find out about you or Loudspeaker Films or Code Oakland. Where can they go?
They can go to teached.org or loudspeakerfilms.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter, Teached, and my name, Kelly Amos, Amos. And then you can find all our other platforms through those. probably start with the website, teach.org, and sign up for our mailing list.
And finally, you could teach Hollywood a thing or two when it comes to making trailers. Because I'm tired of seeing trailers, I already know the full plot and the story. When I saw the Think of Calvin trailer, I was like, oh no, I want to see more. Because the story is so compelling, but you get the basis of what the story is about. I'm anticipating to see what happened, what was the conclusion, what's happening now. But can you speak about Think of Calvin for a second?
Thank you for bringing that up. And that you totally got it, because actually we kind of tell you what happens, in one sense, but the crazy story is actually what happens after he gets arrested, and that will be in the film. It's taking me, in my opinion, too long to finish that film, just because there's so much to try and do. But the story it's so timely. We need to get this out. And I think what's so interesting about it is this young man, he's a father, he's a great husband, he's raising his boys, and everything with the couple is about raising their boys. And then he gets arrested, and one of the boys harassed in front of the boys and in front of all the neighborhood kids, and it's completely ridiculous. And the story and the way things unfold over the next 24 hours and then the next couple months, I think a lot of it will open eyes, because when people look at a story from afar, like the Mike Brown case, okay, well, he did this before. They can find ways to rationalize it, even if that's incorrect, that they can say, well, he was acting like this in the store before, or find some way to dismiss what happened. With this case, I feel like there's really somebody videotaped what was happening, and it's just an insane story. I don't want to give it all away, but we will get that done soon, and I hope people will get online and check it out and then screen it so we can get the information out there.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it gets frustrating when we need cops. I totally understand that. And there are good police officers out there. But there are bad cops, and there's bad policing out there. It's frustrating when people don't want to wrap their head around it. And it's like, come on, you can't be that naive. Just like you got good cops, you do have bad cops, or you have bad laws.
And there seems, there's a writer named Rishon Biddle who's writing about sort of how it ends up with this group mindset, that it's not necessarily bad people who are cops or become cops, and there certainly are some awesome cops. But there becomes this sort of group mentality where people are scared to go against the grain maybe, or speak up. Because in this case with Calvin, a couple of cops, first were on the scene, but then they called backup with like 20 cops, and they were all white, and nobody really stopped the insanity unfolding in front of them. So, and I think we find this in education too, that, for instance, in the school where I taught, or other schools I've been to, where people kind of know, well, you wouldn't want to send your child to that teacher, but we're not going to really do anything about it. We don't feel like we can do anything about it. We're powerless. And there's another film actually in the works that I will tell you about in another interview. You won't believe. You will. You will believe it. But what is allowed to continue, and sort of what we allow, I think that's one reason I'm really passionate about the work I do. Michelle Alexander, the author of The New Jim Crow, she calls what's happening with black males in America a silent Holocaust. And I really agree with that. And I think if you recognize that you are in the middle of a Holocaust, or the equivalent of a Holocaust, and you don't speak up, you are enabling that to continue. So people may think it's weird that a white woman from Valley, Nebraska, I suppose I do too, became, very passionate about these issues. But I think anyone who has seen what I have seen in the schools and working in public policy should want to speak out. I don't know how you couldn't. I don't know how you could walk away from that and not try to change the trajectory of what you're seeing unfold in our cities especially.
Right. Look, we have more Kelly Amoses in the world, it'll be a better place.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and your show is great, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
All right, keep up the good work, Kelly.
Thank you.
I want to thank Kelly Amos for being a great guest on The Digital Life. Make sure you visit teach.org. That's teached.org to learn more about her films, which also includes Path to Prison and the upcoming Think of Calvin. And if you believe in diversity and technology, like I do, make sure you check out Code Oakland. It might change your life. Before I go, I have a Twitter question for you. Tweet me at Kevin Lockett and tell me some of your favorite documentaries. Use the hashtag KLDoc. That's the hashtag KLDoc. And tweet me some of your favorite documentaries. All right, everybody. It's the Digital Life. I'm Kevin Lockett, and I'm out.
The Digital Life with Kevin Lockett.